In what seems to be a complete turnaround from the Raven software team that we know, it looks like the shotguns from Vanguard and Warzone specifically all just got a straight up buff to their damage. Now, before we all start shooting confetti cannons and blasting our air horns, there's a few things I want to talk about. First off, the buff in the last patch and the latest patch stated it was about a 10% increase in damage. This is probably to compensate for the game modes with higher HP now. The other thing is that because of a lack of a certain game mode called Plunder, my testing has been really slow, and among other things getting in the way of finding out what all has changed, I decided that for this particular video, I'm just going to be covering the Einhorn shotgun, I know, and I'll be spending more of my time trying to test the others to find out what's changed and if anything's really different. I know you probably wanted a solid 10-minute video about covering them all, but I can't do that to you guys because it would be rushed and sloppy, and I don't want to rush through it and rush through testing and be sloppy about it, so I hope you understand. But with that being said, today's real focus is the weird stepchild of a pump action and a semi-auto, the Einhorn shotgun. After the incendiary rounds caught a nerf, well, this thing really fell fast into the depths of not really viable at all. The only thing this gun had going for it is that 2-shot kill potential up close, but outside of that, it was really difficult to use because of the slow rate of fire and the limited mag size. But I'm happy to report that some of those issues aren't really as bad after this recent buff. As stated in the notes, aside from the 10% supposed damage buff, the Einhorn got a few other nice little buffs. Notably, the base mag capacity went from 5 to 6, which is cool and all, but the real kicker is now the Einhorn has a 12-round magazine. That's a pretty huge increase to its capacity and definitely helps the gun immensely. But is it a top-tier gun now just from these changes? Well, let's dive in and find out. First off, the damage. It says it was about a 10% increase to damage, but from what I can tell, it honestly seems like it was a little bit more than that for the shotgun. Before, the chest was basically hitting around 128 points of damage, so around 32 per pellet. Now, it could be slightly off because it is hard to hit just the chest level. Sometimes you hit stomach or neck, so it might be a little off, but now a chest shot point blank gave me around 150-ish points of damage, so it's about 37-ish points of damage per pellet or so, and that's definitely a bit better than 10%. But again, that could be because if it was hitting the neck or the stomach, so just know the bottom line is, yeah, it seems like they aren't pulling our legs on this gun, and it does seem to be hitting slightly stronger than before. As far as I can tell, there were really no changes to the ranges, so what do we have with the base Einhorn? Well, from 0 to 4.1 meters, we deal enough damage for 2-shot kills, and then from 4.1 to 5.5, we can kill in 3 shots, and then after that, it takes up to about 4 shots around that 9.5 meters. With the current damage after the buff, that doesn't really change anything for the base gun. With 12 gauge though, which now has 6 rounds mind you, that third damage range, the 5.5 to about 9.5, this thing can actually 3-tap with body shots now, whereas before, the 12 gauge couldn't do that in that specific range, so that's pretty cool. 12 gauge though really hurts your fire rate, and it's probably not what everyone wants to run because of how slow it can be. The big reason is buck and slug and 12-round mags exist. So why buck and slug? Well, out of all the ammo types, it has the most damage potential, especially with headshots, besides normal slugs. Yes, even more so than incendiary, which seems to be a lot weaker now, and the best range. It basically has the same range as I mentioned above. It doesn't add to the range or take away from the range, so you still get that 4.1 max damage range for both 16 and 12 gauge. They don't change it. But the big thing here is that buck and slug with 16 gauge ammo can now also 3-shot kill in that third damage range, that 5.5 to 9.5. Sorry, I know there's a lot of numbers and ranges and blah blah, but just know that from 5.5 to about 9.5 meters, you can 3-tap people now with buck and slug and 16 gauge. That means you can rock that gorgeous 12-round mag cylinder and have close to the same amount of damage output that you did with the old 12-gauge buck and slug rounds without having to use the 12-gauge ammo. I think of all things this update did for the shotgun, that's probably the best thing for most players right there, is having that 12-round mag with buck and slug. Buck and slug and the 12-round 16-gauge mag is generally a good way to go for a lot of people. You can run incendiary if you want, but it's inconsistent and the damage is actually way lower than it used to be, and really it's not as good as it used to be. The 12-gauge mag also works really well, and it is technically more powerful, but you get about the same number of shots to kill of each of those same ranges as before, just more damage. But you know, you could have that or you could have the 12-round mag. It's kind of up to you. I like 12 gauge because of that stopping power, but it just hurts your fire rate so much that you kind of have to use that rapid fire barrel, which again hurts range, so it's a trade-off, but it's honestly up to you and how you want to play with it. So what is my class setup? Well, I've tried a few different ones, and this one seems to be kind of the most versatile overall because it's not super slow, but you don't really have that much range, so it's a trade-off. but basically you're going to want buck and slug with the rapid fire barrel and the 12 round mag. This is going to feel more like a spammy shotgun than the kind of heavy hitter nature of this gun. It still has that 2-shot and 3-shot potential, but the ranges are really cut down from that rapid fire barrel. So this is more of a get out of my face, just spam the hell out of it type of gun or type of setup for this gun, and it's pretty good, but it is still a little inconsistent, and honestly past 5 meters you're better off throwing BBs. I mean, it really is still pretty weak overall. That being said though, if you want other attachments to run, just focus on hip fire accuracy. That seems to be the best way to go. I don't really like aiming down sights, especially with buck and slug that slows it down so much, the aim down sight speed. But if you don't like this kind of setup, if you want a little bit more of a punch to your shots, what you can do is run the 12 gauge ammo type, and then you can use the Clouser big barrel or the rapid fire barrel. And then you can have just packed powder. That way you're not going to have that lack of pellets, and you're going to have some good range, but you're just going to be firing a little bit slower. It is going to be more of a like pump action type of playstyle. You don't want to be spamming someone that's like, I don't know, more than 5 meters away, because you're gonna die. If it takes more than 2 shots, you are going to die. That's just the nature of the gun. So that being said, is this gun top tier now? Is it really a really great shotgun now? Well, the damage changes are great. Then all the changes really are a good step in the right direction. 12 rounds is amazing, and honestly, I would never have expected this kind of change. And of course, like I said, the damage change is also very welcome. But is the Einhorn top tier? It's not even close. I think if anything, it went from most definitely not viable to being slightly more viable, but it's still not really that great. Yes, it is better. It's just that it's still such a pea shooter. It forces you to have to play so darn close that a lot of people probably aren't going to vibe with it really well, because it just shoots absolute marshmallows outside of 5 meters. It's just ridiculous. The magazine size has held it back for so long, and while that's been fixed, the damage past 5 meters, like I said, is still going to get you killed. Even though 3 shots are possible, it's still not the most consistent gun to use, so you'll still probably lose a lot of engagements, and you'll kind of run into that habit where you're supposed to be spraying, or you feel like you should be spraying, and then you just die because you're not doing enough damage. So if you go into this thing using it and thinking it's a cannon, it's really not, so you're still probably going to get killed. But it's definitely better. It's not hugely noticeable, but like I said, 12 rounds is really an awesome change, and that alone is pretty great and worth the buff overall. So thanks, Raven. That was cool to see, and it gives me a glimmer of hope for decent shotgun balancing, but for the record, I think a lot of the shotguns are balanced well. It's just the Vanguard ones that have been in such a weird spot. But like I said, I plan on going over the other shotguns with care and attention to really see what's changed. Maybe the double barrel is better now. Who knows? But of course, I want to know what you guys all think about this buff. What do you think is the best setup to run on this thing now? There's a bunch of different ways you can kit it out, but what is your favorite way to run it? Do you have any other changes I should look at with the Vanguard shotguns? And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.